Hello and welcome to the Deep Dive. You're listening to Westferry Times, Justice in Focus. I'm Emily, your host, and today we're going to dig into something really quite critical here in the UK. The overcrowding crisis that's unfolding in our prisons. We've looked at news reports, government papers, all sorts of sources, and our aim really is to understand the situation as it is now, see what the government's planning, and maybe explore some other ideas too. And helping us navigate all this, we're really pleased to have Dr. James Thornton with us again. Dr. Thornton is a senior lecturer in criminal justice policy at the University of London. His insights are going to be incredibly helpful today. Welcome.
Thank you for having me back. It's certainly a timely and very important topic to discuss.
Absolutely. So let's start right at the core of it. The numbers themselves are pretty alarming, aren't they? Could you sort of paint a picture for us? What does overcrowding actually look like right now?
Certainly. I mean, the most striking thing is the increase over, say, the last 30 years or so. If you look back to 1993, the prison population was around 44,500. Today, in 2024, it shot up to over 88,000. So more than double.
Wow, double.
Yes. And it's not down to just one single reason. It's really a mix of things. We're seeing generally longer sentences being given out. There's also more use of remand, holding people before trial, which fills spaces quickly. And unfortunately, we've also seen a rise in the number of people being recalled to prison after they've been released.
And I heard the situation's especially tight in the male prisons.
That's absolutely right. The latest figures we have show male prisons operating at, 99% capacity, basically full.
99%.
And the projections, they suggest they could actually be completely full, 100%, perhaps as early as November this year.
Goodness. That's quite a stark image. So what does that actually mean day to day? What are the immediate impacts when prisons are that full?
Well, the consequences are pretty severe and wide-ranging. First off, you have immense strain on basic resources. Everything from, bedding and food to healthcare, it's all stretched incredibly thin. Then it really hits rehabilitation efforts hard. It's very difficult to run effective programs, education, training, therapy, when you just don't have the space or the staff time because everything's focused on managing the sheer numbers.
So less chance for people to actually turn things around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sadly, overcrowding often correlates with increased tension and violence within the prison walls. And finally, think about the pressure, immense pressure on prison officers who are working in incredibly difficult conditions, and it puts a strain on the entire justice system, really.
Okay, so the government knows this is a crisis. They've announced some steps. What are they actually proposing to do about it?
Right. The government's response seems to focus on two main areas. First, there's a big capital investment. They've pledged £4.7 billion to build 3 large new prisons. The idea is to add about 14,000 new places overall.
14,000? That sounds as a lot.
It is, but it's a long-term plan. We're looking at 2031 for that capacity to be fully available.
Okay, so not an immediate fix.
Not entirely, no. Which brings us to the second part, which is more immediate. They've introduced a new policy for certain offenders who've been recalled to prison. This is for those originally sentenced to between 1 and 4 years, and crucially, it excludes serious violent or sexual offenders and those convicted of domestic abuse. Under this policy, they could be released after serving a fixed 28-day period back inside.
And the thinking there is just to free up beds quickly.
Precisely. The estimate is that this specific measure could free up around 1,400 prison spaces relatively quickly.
Okay, so new prisons long-term, quicker release for some recalls short-term. Are there other ideas being floated, perhaps around sentencing itself?
Yes, there are definitely broader conversations happening about sentencing reform. One idea that's being discussed is allowing prisoners to potentially earn early release, maybe after serving a third of their sentence. But, and this is important, it wouldn't be automatic. It would depend on consistently good behavior and also actively taking part in work or training or education while inside.
Right, earning their way out, in a sense.
Kind of, yes. And interestingly, this isn't, pulled out of thin air. They're looking at models used elsewhere. There was a system implemented in Texas back in 2011 that had similar principles, and it apparently had some positive impact on their overcrowding issues.
So looking at what's worked elsewhere makes sense. Now, thinking beyond just capacity and sentencing rules, are there any other, perhaps more innovative approaches being considered here?
There is some exploration happening, yes.
Yeah.
One interesting area is technology, specifically what's sometimes called nudge technology.
Nudge tech, what does that involve?
Well, think about reminders on your phone or fitness tracker. The idea is similar. It might involve things like special wristwatches or apps for offenders on probation. These could send reminders about appointments with their probation officer or maybe curfew times. The goal is to sort of gently prompt compliance and positive habits, supporting their rehabilitation out in the community, hopefully reducing the chance they end up back inside.
That's fascinating, using tech to support people staying out of trouble. What about open prisons? We don't seem to hear as much about them. Could they play a bigger role?
That's a really good question, and yes, potentially they could. Open prisons often get overlooked, but they actually show quite a bit of promise, especially when you look at rehabilitation outcomes and cost.
How so?
Well, the data suggests that open prisons often perform better than higher security prisons in terms of reducing reoffending rates for the people who go through them. And significantly, they are also much cheaper to run per prisoner.
Cheaper and potentially more effective for some.
For suitable candidates, yes. So the argument is that perhaps expanding the use of open prisons for those assessed as low risk could definitely help ease the pressure on the more secure, overcrowded parts of the system, and maybe even lead to better results long term.
Okay, so we have building, policy changes, tech ideas, maybe more use of open prisons. But putting these things into practice, that can't be easy. What are the main challenges or obstacles the government might face?
You're right, implementation is always the tricky part. There are several significant challenges. One is always public perception and potential political pushback. Reforms, especially those involving early release or community sentences, can sometimes be painted as soft on crime, which can be politically difficult.
Right, the headlines.
Exactly. Then there's the practical side. The probation service is already under considerable strain. If you're going to release more people early or rely more on community alternatives, you absolutely need a well-resourced, well-staffed probation service to supervise them effectively and provide support. That requires investment too.
So it's not just about prisons, it's the whole system.
The whole system, yes. And finally, with new things like the NUNC's technology, you need to be sure they actually work. Proper evaluation is key. You need to know they're safe, effective, and actually achieving what they're supposed to hit, helping people stay out of prison.
It definitely sounds like a complex web of issues. No easy answers. So, Dr. Thornton, as we sort of wrap this up, if you had to pinpoint the priorities, what are the most crucial steps needed to really tackle this overcrowding crisis effectively?
Well, looking ahead, it really has to be a multi-pronged strategy. There's no single silver bullet. Firstly, yes, investing in the prison estate, the actual buildings, is necessary to deal with the immediate capacity crunch. That $4.7 billion is part of that. But that has to be combined with smart, evidence-based sentencing reforms. We need to think carefully about who goes to prison and for how long. And absolutely crucial is expanding and properly funding community-based alternatives, things that address why people offend in the first place.
Like rehabilitation programs.
Exactly. Robust rehabilitation, both inside prison and outside. And underpinning all of this, there needs to be really strong collaboration. Government departments, the courts, prisons, probation, community groups, they all need to be working together effectively. It's the only way to make lasting change.
A truly joined-up approach. Dr. Thornton, thank you so much. That was incredibly insightful, really helping us understand the layers of this issue.
It was my pleasure. As I said, it's a vital conversation.
And that does bring us to the end of this deep dive. Thank you so much for joining us here on Westferry Times, Justice in Focus. We'll be back soon with another deep dive, continuing to explore the challenges and sometimes the innovations within our justice system, so do stay tuned for that. Until then, from all of us here, thank you for watching Westferry Times. Goodbye for now.